celestial city of Eridu had always been a place of order and light, where the will of the gods was law and the cosmos was governed with an iron hand. But now, a heavy pall hung over its gleaming spires, a darkness that seemed to seep into the very stones of the city. The heavens themselves were dim, the stars flickering like candles in the wind, as if they too sensed the growing unrest that threatened to upend the delicate balance of the universe. In the grand hall of the divine palace, Marduk, the supreme god, sat upon his golden throne, his brow furrowed in thought. His once gleaming armor was dulled with the weight of countless battles, his once bright eyes shadowed with the burden of endless responsibility. The echoes of the past still haunted him, the rebellion of Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil, the treachery of the gods he had once considered allies. And now, the underworld, the realm of death and decay, had fallen into their hands, a dark fortress from which they would no doubt launch their campaign to overthrow him. Before him, the gods Nergal, Kali, and Ares stood, their expressions a mixture of frustration and anger. They had fought valiantly to defend their realm, but they had been driven back, their strength no match for the combined might of the rebel gods. They had come to Marduk now, not as conquerors, but as supplicants, seeking his aid to retake what had been lost. Nergal, the god of the underworld, stepped forward, his eyes burning with a cold, unyielding resolve. Marduk, he began, his voice a deep rumble that resonated through the hall. The underworld has fallen. Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil have taken what is mine, what is ours. We fought with all our strength, but we were overwhelmed. We come to you now, not in defeat, but in a request for reinforcements. With your help, we can reclaim the underworld and restore the balance that has been lost. Kali, the goddess of destruction, stood beside him, her dark eyes filled with a simmering rage. They have taken what is ours, she hissed, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. They have turned the underworld into a fortress, a place of chaos and darkness. We cannot allow them to hold it, Marduk. We must strike back, before they gather more power. Ares, the god of war, clenched his fists, his knuckles white with the force of his anger. This is not just about the underworld, he growled, his voice filled with the fire of battle. This is about the future of the cosmos. If Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil are allowed to continue their rebellion, they will tear the universe apart. We must stop them, and we must do it now. Marduk listened to their pleas in silence, his gaze distant, as if his thoughts were far away. He had always been the supreme ruler, the one who held the cosmos in balance, but now, for the first time, he felt the weight of that responsibility pressing down on him like a mountain. The universe was vast, its forces complex and ever-changing, and for all his power, he sometimes felt as though he was merely a pawn in a game too vast for even a god to comprehend. Finally, he sighed, a deep, weary sound that seemed to echo through the grand hall like the last breath of a dying world. This is the way the universe has been, he said quietly, his voice tinged with a deep, abiding sorrow. The cosmos is a place of endless cycles, of creation and destruction, of rise and fall. What has happened in the underworld is not an aberration, but a part of that cycle. The balance has been disrupted, yes, but it will be restored in time, as it always has been. Nergal's eyes narrowed, his expression hardening as he struggled to contain his anger. And what of the rebellion? He demanded, his voice low and dangerous. What of Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil? They have defied you, defied the order of the cosmos. Will you simply let them continue unchecked? Marduk's gaze remained distant, his thoughts turning inward as he considered the question. The rebellion is part of the cycle, he said slowly, his voice thoughtful. Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil seek to challenge my rule, to upset the order of the cosmos. But their actions, too, are part of the balance. They rise, they fall. As we all do. Kali let out a sharp breath, her eyes flashing with anger. So you would do nothing? She spat, her voice filled with disbelief. You would sit here, in your palace, and watch as they tear the universe apart. Is this the wisdom of the supreme god? Marduk's gaze finally met hers, his expression calm, though there was a deep, unspoken sadness in his eyes. There is more to the universe than power and control, Kali, he said quietly. There is a wisdom in accepting the way things are, and understanding that not every battle must be fought, not every challenge met with force. Sometimes, the greatest strength lies in acceptance. Ares let out a low growl, his fists clenching even tighter. "And what of us?" he demanded, his voice filled with frustration. "We have fought for you, bled for you. We have lost our realm, our power. Will you abandon us now, in our time of need?" Marduk shook his head slowly, his expression filled with a deep, abiding sorrow. "I do not abandon you, Ares," he said softly. "But there are forces at work here that are beyond even my control. The universe moves according to its own will, its own design. We are but players in a vast, cosmic drama, and sometimes we must accept our roles, even if they are not the ones we would choose." Nergal's eyes flashed with anger, his voice rising as he struggled to contain the fury that burned within him. "You speak of acceptance, of cycles, but what of justice? What of retribution? Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil have defied you, defied the very order of the cosmos. Will you allow them to go unpunished?" Marduk's gaze softened, his expression filled with a deep, abiding sadness. "Justice will come, in time," he said quietly. "But it will come in its own way, according to its own design. We cannot force the universe to bend to our will, Nergal. We must learn to move with it, to understand its rhythms, its cycles. That is the true wisdom of the gods." Kali let out a sharp, bitter laugh, her eyes flashing with anger. "And what of our kingdom?" she demanded, her voice filled with frustration. "What of the underworld? Will you simply let it fall into chaos, into the hands of those who would destroy everything we have built?" Marduk's gaze remained calm, though there was a deep, unspoken sadness in his eyes. "The underworld is part of the cycle, Kali," he said softly. "It is a place of death, of decay, of transformation. It will endure, as it always has. The chaos you fear is but a part of its nature, a necessary part of its existence." Ares shook his head slowly, his expression filled with disbelief. "You would have us accept this?" he demanded, his voice low and dangerous. "You would have us bow to the will of those who seek to destroy us?" Marduk's gaze met his expression filled with a deep, abiding sadness. "I would have you understand the way of the universe, Ares," he said quietly. "I would have you see that there is a wisdom in acceptance, and understanding that not every battle must be fought, not every challenge met with force. Sometimes, the greatest strength lies in knowing when to let go." The three gods stood in silence, their expressions a mixture of frustration, anger, and disbelief. They had come to Marduk seeking aid, seeking guidance, but the words he had given them were not the ones they had expected, not the ones they had wanted to hear. Finally, Nergal spoke, his voice low and filled with a simmering rage. "You may speak of cycles, of acceptance, Marduk, but I will not stand by and watch as the underworld falls into chaos. I will reclaim what is mine, with or without your help." Kali nodded in agreement, her eyes filled with a cold, unyielding resolve. "We will fight, Marduk," she said, her voice filled with determination. "Even if you will not." Ares, his fists still clenched, let out a low growl. "We will not be abandoned," he said, his voice filled with fury. "We will take back what is ours, and we will do it with or without you." Marduk sighed, his expression filled with a deep, abiding sorrow. "Do what you must," he said quietly. "But remember this, the universe moves according to its own will, its own design. We are but players in a vast, cosmic drama, and sometimes we must accept our roles, even if they are not the ones we would choose." With those words, Marduk turned away, his gaze distant as he returned to his thoughts, his mind once again consumed by the weight of the cosmos. The three gods stood in silence for a moment, their expressions hardening as they realized that Marduk would not help them, that they were on their own. Finally, with a final, furious glance at the supreme god, Nergal, Kali, and Ares turned and left the grand hall, their footsteps echoing through the silent corridors of the palace as they made their way out into the dim light of the celestial city. The Conquest of Shadows. The underworld, now under the dominion of Tiamat, Enlil, and Ishtar, pulsed with dark energy, a labyrinthine realm of shadows and flame. The once desolate halls, now teeming with the power of the three gods, had become a place where darkness thrived, and the whispers of the dead filled the air with an ominous melody. The underworld had become their fortress, but Tiamat knew that to truly challenge Marduk, their power must grow beyond these shadowed walls. Deep within the heart of their conquered realm, Tiamat convened a meeting with Ishtar and Enlil. The chamber was a vast cavern, its walls lined with the bones of the ancient dead, its floor a swirling vortex of black mist. The air was thick with the scent of brimstone and decay, and the very ground seemed to pulse with a heartbeat of its own, as if the underworld itself were alive, a creature of shadow and fire. Tiamat, her serpentine form coiled upon a throne of twisted obsidian, gazed at her companions with eyes that burned like twin suns in the void. Her presence was a force of nature, a living embodiment of chaos and destruction, and the air around her crackled with the raw power she wielded. Ishtar, Enlil, she began, her voice a low, resonant hiss that filled the chamber like the whisper of 1,000 souls. We have taken the underworld, and we have transformed it into a stronghold worthy of our power. But this is only the beginning. To truly challenge Marduk, we must expand our dominion, we must grow stronger. And I have seen the path that will lead us to that strength. Ishtar, the goddess of love and war, her form radiant even in the gloom of the underworld, leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. "What do you propose, Tiamat?" she asked, her voice a melodic whisper that carried the promise of both creation and destruction. Enlil, the storm god, his gaze as dark as the skies before a tempest, nodded in agreement. "Yes, Tiamat," he rumbled, his voice deep and powerful. "We have come this far together. What is your plan for our next move?" Tiamat's smile was a sharp, predatory thing, a smile that spoke of dark intentions and hidden power. "The demon race," she hissed, her voice filled with malice. "They are strong, cunning, and ancient. They have ruled their own dark realm for eons, but they are isolated, fragmented. If we can bring them under our control, if we can incorporate them into our empire, we will gain a powerful new force to bolster our ranks." Ishtar's eyes widened in surprise, but her smile mirrored Tiamat's in its cold calculation. "The demons are formidable," she mused, her voice thoughtful. "But they are also volatile, unpredictable. They thrive on chaos and destruction, but they lack the unity and purpose that we possess. If we could harness their power, bend it to our will." Enlil's stormy gaze flickered with interest. "The demons have always been a thorn in the side of the divine order," he growled, his voice filled with a simmering anger. "They are creatures of pure darkness, and their power is not to be underestimated. But if we could break them, if we could bring them to heel, our empire would be unstoppable." Tiamat's smile widened, her eyes burning with a fierce determination. "Exactly," she purred, her voice filled with dark intent. "We will strike at the heart of their realm, we will crush their leaders, and we will incorporate them into our domain. The demons will serve us, or they will be destroyed." Ishtar and Enlil exchanged a glance, their expressions hardening as they realized the enormity of what Tiamat proposed. The demons were a race born of darkness, creatures that had never bowed to any power, not even to the gods. To conquer them would be a feat of unparalleled magnitude, but the rewards would be great. "I am with you, Tiamat," Ishtar said, her voice filled with resolve. "We will bring the demons to their knees, and they will serve us, just as the underworld does now." Enlil nodded, his expression grim but determined. "Let us prepare for war," he said, his voice filled with the thunder of a coming storm. "The demons will fall, and our empire will rise." The Demonic Council. In the deepest, darkest reaches of the demon realm, a place where even the shadows feared to tread, the demon lords gathered in council. Their meeting place was a vast, cavernous hall, its walls carved from black stone, its ceiling lost in the darkness above. The air was thick with the stench of sulfur and blood, and the ground beneath their feet was slick with the ichor of countless battles. At the head of the council sat their leader, Baal, a towering figure wreathed in flame and shadow, his eyes glowing like embers in the void. Baal was a creature of ancient power, his form a grotesque amalgamation of beast and man, his body covered in scales as black as night, his horns curved like the blades of a scythe. He ruled the demon race with an iron fist, his word law among the denizens of the dark. Beside him sat his most trusted members, Malphus, the demon of strategy and war, his form sleek and serpentine, his eyes narrow and cunning, Gorgo, the demon of plague and pestilence, his body a mass of writhing tendrils and rotting flesh, and Zagan, the demon of transformation and chaos, his form constantly shifting, a nightmare made flesh. Baal's voice was a low, rumbling growl as he addressed the council, his gaze sweeping over his assembled members. "The gods are moving against us," he said, his voice filled with a deep, simmering rage. "Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil have conquered the underworld, and now they turn their eyes towards our realm. They seek to bring us under their control, to make us their servants. But we are demons, born of the darkness, and we bow to no one." Malphus hissed in agreement, his eyes gleaming with a predatory light. "The gods have always sought to control us, to bend us to their will," he snarled, his voice filled with venom. "But we are not like the other races. We are chaos incarnate, and we will not be tamed." Gorgo let out a wet, gurgling laugh, his tendrils writhing as he spoke. "Let them come," he rasped, his voice a sickly wheeze. "We will spread our plague among them, rot their flesh, and devour their souls. The gods will learn to fear the darkness." Zagan's form shifted, his body warping and twisting as he spoke. "We are the children of chaos," he whispered, his voice a dissonant melody that seemed to echo from the very walls of the chamber. "And chaos cannot be contained. The gods may come for us, but they will find only their doom." Baal's gaze darkened, his eyes burning with a fierce, unyielding resolve. "We will meet the gods in battle," he growled, his voice a low, menacing rumble. "And we will show them the true power of the demon race. They seek to conquer us, to incorporate us into their empire, but they will find that the darkness is not so easily tamed." The confrontation. The armies of the gods and the demons met on the desolate plains at the border of the demon realm, a place where the very ground was scorched black by the fires of countless battles. The sky above was a swirling mass of dark clouds, shot through with the occasional flash of crimson lightning, and the air was thick with the acrid stench of sulfur and blood. Tiamat, her serpentine form coiled like a living storm, led the forces of the gods, her eyes blazing with a fierce determination. Beside her stood Ishtar, radiant even in the gloom, her sword glowing with an inner fire that promised death to any who opposed her. Enlil stood on her other side, his stormy gaze fixed on the demon horde before them, his spear of lightning crackling with barely restrained energy. Across the battlefield, Baal and his members stood at the head of the demon army, their forms wreathed in shadow and flame. The demons were a nightmarish sight, a horde of twisted, monstrous creatures, their bodies warped and twisted by the dark energies that had birthed them. They moved with a savage grace, their eyes gleaming with a malevolent hunger, their claws and fangs eager for the taste of divine flesh. Tiamat's voice was a low, resonant hiss as she addressed the demon lord, her gaze fixed on Baal with a cold, predatory intent. "Baal," she called out, her voice echoing across the battlefield. "You stand before the might of the gods, yet you persist in your defiance. Join us, and you will be granted power beyond your wildest dreams. Resist, and you will be destroyed." Baal's laughter was a deep, rumbling growl that sent a shiver through the ranks of the demon army. "You seek to conquer us, Tiamat," he growled, his voice filled with scorn. "But you know nothing of the darkness that we wield. We are not like the other races. We are demons, born of chaos, and we will not bow to your will." Ishtar stepped forward, her sword held high, its blade gleaming with a fierce light that seemed to cut through the very darkness of the demon realm. "The time for words is over, Baal," she said, her voice filled with a cold, steely resolve. "We will bring you to heel, or we will end you here and now. The choice is yours." Baal's eyes narrowed, his gaze burning with a fierce, unyielding rage. "Then let it be war," he snarled, his voice a low, menacing growl. "We will meet you in battle, gods, and we will show you the true power of the demon race." With a roar that shook the very ground beneath their feet, the two armies charged at each other, the forces of the gods and the demons colliding in a cataclysmic clash that sent shockwaves rippling through the battlefield. The air was filled with the sound of clashing weapons, the roar of battle, and the screams of the dying. Tiamat moved through the chaos like a living storm, her form shifting and writhing as she struck at the demons with a fury that seemed to tear the very fabric of reality itself. Her coils lashed out, crushing demons beneath their weight, while her jaws snapped, tearing through flesh and bone with ease. She was a force of nature, a creature of chaos and destruction, and the demons fell before her like wheat before the scythe. Ishtar fought with a grace that belied the ferocity of her attacks, her sword flashing through the air as she cut down demon after demon, her movements a deadly ballet of death and destruction. She was radiant, a beacon of light in the darkness, and the demons shrank back before her, their twisted forms no match for the divine power she wielded. Enlil was a storm incarnate, his spear of lightning flashing through the air as he struck at the demon horde, his power a tempest that tore through their ranks with a fury that left nothing in its wake. He moved with the speed of the wind, his strikes precise and deadly, and the demons fell before him like leaves in a hurricane. The fall of the demon race. At first, the battle raged evenly, the forces of the gods and the demons locked in a struggle that seemed to have no end. The demons fought with a savage fury, their bodies fueled by the dark energies of their realm, while the gods moved with a grace and power that spoke of their divine nature. But as the battle wore on, it became clear that the tide was turning in favor of the gods. The demons, for all their strength and ferocity, were no match for the combined might of Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil. The ground beneath their feet was littered with the bodies of the fallen, the air thick with the stench of blood and death, and still the gods pressed their advantage, driving the demons back with a relentless assault. Baal, his body battered and bruised, fought with all the strength he had left, his claws and fangs tearing through the ranks of the gods' forces. But even he could feel the weight of the battle pressing down on him, the knowledge that they were losing, that the demons were being crushed beneath the power of the gods. Malphas, his serpentine form coiled in a defensive stance, hissed in frustration as he watched the demon horde falter. "We cannot hold them," he snarled, his voice filled with a cold, calculating anger. "The gods are too strong. We must retreat, regroup, or we will be destroyed." Gorgo, his tendrils writhing in agitation, let out a wet, gurgling laugh. "Retreat? There is nowhere to retreat to," he rasped, his voice filled with a sickly wheeze. "This is our realm, our home. If we fall here, we fall for good." Zagan, his form shifting and warping as he fought, let out a snarl of frustration. "Then we fight to the last," he growled, his voice a dissonant melody. "We will not bow to the gods, we will not surrender. If we die here, we die as demons, as creatures of chaos and darkness." Baal's gaze darkened, his eyes burning with a fierce, unyielding resolve. "We will fight to the end," he growled, his voice a low, menacing rumble. "But we will not die in vain. If we fall, we will take as many of them with us as we can. Let the gods see the true power of the demon race." But even as the demons fought with all the strength they had left, it was clear that the battle was lost. The forces of the gods pressed their advantage, driving the demons back, breaking their lines, and crushing their resistance beneath the sheer weight of their power. Finally, with a roar that shook the very ground beneath their feet, Tiamat struck the final blow, her form coiling around Baal and crushing him beneath her weight, her jaws snapping as she tore through his flesh and bone. The demon lord let out a final, defiant roar, his voice filled with a fierce, unyielding rage, before his body fell limp, his life extinguished by the power of the gods. With Baal's death, the demon horde faltered, their will to fight shattered by the loss of their leader. The demons who had once been so fierce, so unyielding, now fell back before the onslaught of the gods, their bodies broken and beaten, their spirits crushed beneath the weight of their defeat. The battle was over. The new empire. The battlefield was silent, the air thick with the stench of blood and death, the ground glittered with the bodies of the fallen. The once mighty demon horde was broken, their leaders slain, their will to fight shattered by the overwhelming power of the gods. Tiamat, her form towering over the battlefield, surveyed the carnage with a cold, calculating gaze. Her eyes burned with a fierce, unyielding resolve, her mind already turning to the next phase of their plan. The demon race had been defeated, their realm conquered, and now they would be incorporated into the empire she, Ishtar, and Enlil had forged. Ishtar, her sword still glowing with the light of battle, approached Tiamat, her expression a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. "The demons are broken," she said, her voice filled with a cold, steely resolve. "Their realm is ours, and their power will be a valuable addition to our empire." Enlil, his stormy gaze still crackling with residual energy, nodded in agreement. "We have taken their realm, but we must ensure that they remain under our control," he growled, his voice filled with a simmering anger. "The demons are creatures of chaos, and they will not easily submit to our rule. We must be vigilant." Tiamat's smile was a sharp, predatory thing, a smile that spoke of dark intentions and hidden power. "We will break them," she hissed, her voice filled with malice. "We will bend them to our will, or we will destroy them. The demon race will serve us, and our empire will grow stronger with every realm we conquer." Ishtar nodded, her expression hardening as she considered the task ahead. "We will need to establish our rule here, to ensure that the demons do not rise against us," she said, her voice filled with determination. "But once they are brought to heel, they will be a powerful force in our army." Enlil's gaze darkened, his eyes burning with a fierce, unyielding resolve. "Let the demons see the true power of the gods," he growled, his voice a low, menacing rumble. "Let them know that we are their masters now." And so, the demon race was incorporated into the empire of Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil, their realm a new addition to the dark kingdom they had forged. The demons, once proud and unyielding, now served the gods who had conquered them, their power harnessed to further the ambitions of their new masters. The underworld, once a place of death and despair, now throbbed with a new energy, a power born of the combined forces of the gods and the demons. The shadows deepened, the flames burned brighter, and the darkness that had once been Nurgle's domain now stretched further, reaching out into the void, hungry for more. Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil stood together at the edge of their new empire, their eyes fixed on the distant horizon. They had conquered the underworld, they had crushed the demon race, and now they would turn their gaze to the heavens. The storm was gathering, and soon it would break upon the cosmos with a fury that had not been seen since the dawn of creation. And when it did, the universe would tremble before the might of their dark empire. In the silence of the demon realm, the shadows whispered of what was to come, their voices filled with a dark anticipation. The cosmos would be remade, and the age of Tiamat, Ishtar, and Enlil would begin.